All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Nick Smolowski. I'm with Bad Elf today, and I'd like to go ahead and introduce Ken Grove from the Geoholics. We are in our last day of our Geospatial Vendor Week, celebrating Surveyors Week nationally. Today, we have a special guest, Byram Hess. Byram was born and raised in Arizona, came from an engineering surveying family. His father was a civil engineer and registered land surveyor. He's owned his own civil engineering and land surveying firm for over 30 years. He is currently the chief financial officer at Hess Roundtree, a small local civil engineering and land surveying firm, as mentioned, in Phoenix, Arizona. Byram, as CFO, runs the business side of the firm, does project management, and apparently also loves both laser scanning and UAV mapping. He is also a UAS remote pilot. He is a University of Arizona graduate, so we'll forgive him for that as a Sun Devil. Just kidding. Love to see Bearcats. And he got a bachelor's in science and business administration with a major in finance and a bachelor's of arts in psychology, a master's of business and MBA, also through the University of Arizona. Without further ado, I would like to be quiet, and I apologize again if the internet connection is a little shaky. Byram's is much better. So Byram, would you like to take it away, sir?
I will. Good morning to everyone. Happy Friday. Before I get started, I know this is Surveyor Appreciation Week. So like I said, I grew up in a civil engineering surveying family, and I believe surveying is a very valuable service that is provided to the AEC industry. And unfortunately, I believe it's very undervalued. It's kind of the way people view it. And unfortunately, some of that I think is kind of the way we as a surveying industry approach things. So I'm going to talk a little bit about when you're pursuing a project, some of the things to consider. So the first thing, are you selling a commodity or a professional service? And what I mean by this is I'll use like a barrel of oil as an example. If I have two different barrels of oil, there's really no difference between the two. So if I'm going to be purchasing a barrel of oil, I'm only looking at cost, basically. What is the price of that oil? And that's the only thing that the consumer is concerned about. So a commodity competes on cost alone. If you're trying to win business based on price alone, then you're treating your service as a commodity. This usually leads to lower profit margins unless you're more efficient than your competition. And by having lower profit margins, it's hard to make yourself more efficient because you have to have high volume. So you're not going to have time to invest in your employees, invest in technology, spend time trying to figure out innovative solutions to help out your clients. Unfortunately, there are a lot of clients that treat surveying as a commodity. You see this a lot in Arizona in construction and staking. It's for a lot of contractors, they look at staking and it's basically they just want the lowest price and they don't really look at the service you're providing them. On the other hand, professional service competes on the value the service brings to a project. Surveying is considered a professional service because the knowledge and expertise of the service brings high value to a project. As a professional service, you want to compete on the values of your service, not just price. And the values that your service brings is what differentiates you from your competition. And there's many ways you can increase that value to your clients. Some examples: timeliness, trust, cost, innovative solutions. It's good to get to know your clients, build relationships, and understand what's important to them. Because usually if you can create more value for your client, you can charge higher prices, which is going to lead to higher profit margins. When you're looking at pursuing a project, it's good to think of it as an investment, not just, hey, I'm trying to go get this work, because you're investing your resources, money, usually money and labor for each project with the hope of a positive return. In the finance world, if you're interested in something, you want a higher return for the risk that you're taking on. For example, bonds are low yield because they're looked at as being a safer investment, where stocks have the possibility of getting higher returns, but they're looked at as being a lot more risky. You should take the same approach when you're looking at pricing a project. If a project is more risky, you should want to charge a higher price if you're able to. Fortunately, there are ways you can mitigate risk, and I'm going to discuss some of those. So there's a couple during the process of looking to pursue a project, you can mitigate it. First, before you even do a proposal, you can do what's called a go, no-go analysis, deciding, hey, are we going to even try to go after this project? During the proposal stage, there's one of the easiest ways to help limit risk is just a limit to liability clause. And then probably the thing that keeps me up most at night as a finance person is when you get that client contract, it's the stuff that's in indemnification clauses. So a go, no-go analysis is the process of going through different factors that might impact both risk and profitability of the project to decide if you want to pursue it. Some companies do this more formal. They might have like a checklist they go through. At our firm, to be honest, we don't have a specific checklist. We kind of have the certain items we know we kind of will discuss, and we don't do it for every project. If it's like, hey, we work with this client all the time, this is in our wheelhouse, it doesn't make sense to take the time to kind of look at it. But if we're real busy and we don't know about capacity, then we'll kind of go through these items. And this is just some of the items. Different companies might look at different factors that might affect this. Some of the factors are like project type. Obviously, different projects inherently have different types of risk. If I'm doing a high precision project that's say like on a building and I make one mistake and it could cost $1 million, that has a lot more risk than if I'm doing a topo for a sports field. So my liability is a lot less. Expertise, does the firm have the expertise? Is this project something that we usually don't do? That is gonna, anytime you're doing a project that you're not familiar with, you're gonna be learning as you're going. And that's gonna create added risk to that project. A big one is staff and equipment. Does my staff have the capability to do this project? Let's say I have 2 survey party chiefs that, again, let's say I'm doing a high precision control network, and I have only 2 surveyors that really have the knowledge to do that, 2 party chiefs, but they're already committed to projects. Then if I take this project, I'm gonna have to put on a staff member that doesn't have the knowledge to probably do it accuracy. That's going to increase the risk. The same as with equipment. If I'm, again, doing a high precision job that requires the specs, if I'm using a 5-second gun instead of a 1-second gun, then or if I have a 5-second gun instead of that 1-second gun, I probably shouldn't be taking on that project because I won't be able to meet the specifications with my equipment. History of a client's a big one. Does the client have the expertise to be doing the project that they're doing? I know everyone that's probably does construction staking's dealt with this, where if you have a superintendent that doesn't manage a project very well, it can significantly increase the cost for everyone on the project. If they call you out there and they're not really ready, or there's equipment on the way where you're supposed to be laying out, it could take you 4 times as much time to do the job compared to if it's run very efficiently. Also, what's the client's history of payment, things like that. Default risk. Obviously, we're investing those resources up front to do a project. So if we don't get paid on the back end, that's we're assuming that risk up front. One way we mitigate that is, say, a lot of times we're more concerned if it's like a residential, some homeowner reaches out, wants a boundary survey. We don't know who they are. Are they going to pay us? We'll put a little clause for unknown clients on jobs like that that says, hey, we want some upfront fee, maybe 50%, 30%, whatever you feel comfortable. So you're at least covering some of your cost to start that project. Another thing sometimes we do to kind of mitigate that risk at our firm is we'll say if we're doing like a boundary survey, we might say, hey, we'll give you the unsigned boundary to show that we finished the work, but we won't give you the signed copy until you've actually delivered payment. And then the last one I want to discuss is one that I think probably gets in our industry, from my opinion, gets kind of left out the most in kind of thought process is opportunity cost. A lot of times we're so worried, hey, we need to get this work, that we don't sometimes will leave capacity for the more high margin work. So let's say, and I'm gonna go back to construction staking because that seems to be kind of one of the things that takes a lot of man hours, but the margins are a lot lower, is if I fill up all my capacity doing that low margin work, and then I have a client that's a high margin work comes along, but I don't have the capacity, I'm now losing that opportunity by taking on this project. So if my capacity is getting close to limits, I want to think about those things before I pursue the project. Am I leaving capacity open so I can service the clients that I already have, the high margin clients? Like, this risk always worries me is, hey, if I have a client that, hey, needs stuff with quick turnaround, they come to me, I don't want to lose that client or have them search for another land surveyor to provide that because I wasn't able to meet their deadlines because I'm now working on other projects. During the proposal phase, probably one of the easiest ways to limit a person's risk is just by putting a limits of liability clause. Basically, limits of liability clause is going to limit your up end of liability on a project for a mistake. So here's a common one that we have at our firm that we use in our contracts is the client agrees to limit the surveyor's liability to the client and to all construction contractors, subcontractors on the project due to the surveyor's professional negligent acts or errors of omissions, such that the total aggregated liability of the surveyor to meet those named not to exceed total fee for the service rendered to the project. So basically what this clause is saying is, if my fee is $1,000, I make a mistake that costs $10,000, the most you can get is $1,000 from me. And this can, like when you hear big cases, sometimes these clauses like save companies, can save you like hundreds of thousands of dollars if it's a very large mistake. But a client signed your proposal that had a clause like this in it, it really can limit that liability of what you're taking on. Now, going back, like I said, this is the thing that keeps me up is when we get contracts from usually contractors, but even some of your larger design firms, a lot of times they'll include an indemnification clause. And the reason these can keep me up at night is because a lot of times they'll put the word in there to defend. And I don't know if anyone's ever reviewed these contracts, they're full of legalese. And you could think like a word or two, like, oh, that doesn't open me up to a lot of liability, but one or two words could be the difference in opening up like unlimited liability on a project. And the word to defend is so dangerous because professional liability won't cover for your defending someone else. They'll cover if you are found to be at fault, they'll pay for the fees as part of that, but they won't pay for the upfront defense. So let's say I'm on a project and something goes wrong. It seems like they always want to accuse the surveyor as the person wrong, is the first person that gets blamed. It goes to a lawsuit. If I have that to defend in this contract, then now I have the duty to pay for their lawyer costs, even if I might not be at fault. And since the professional liability won't cover it, you're as a company are on the hook. And if you're a small company, that most small companies don't have the cash flow to basically afford to pay a bunch of legal fees up front. So I would always try to negotiate. A lot of times it's hard to get it out because if you're working with a larger company, the project manager you're working with might not have the ability to strike the word defend. It might be some lawyer or CFO tell them, no, you have to include this because it's limiting their liability. So if you can't get them to remove it, then one thing that we've been successful doing on some projects is getting them to include this into the indemnification, which is with regards to professional liability, consultants shall have no upfront duty to defend the client or contractor, but shall reimburse defense costs on the client and contractor to the extent of its indemnity and professional liability obligations. And but basically what this clause is saying is, it's saying, hey, we'll still defend you, say if it was like a workman's comp claim or something like that, we have the duty to defend you. And I believe the insurances, don't quote me on, I believe insurances, those insurances will cover that. but your professional liability won't cover. So this is basically saying, hey, if it's a errors and omissions deal, we're not going to require you to defend. So, and that's basically like kind of a quick overview on some things to look at when pursuing a project, and I'll open it up to questions.
That was great, Byron. I really appreciate that. Lots of very good information. I noticed there are some other business owners out there. Trent, Will, any thoughts or questions for Byron? Kent, got a question?
Oh, there we go. Could I unmute myself the right way? Oh, go for it, Kent. He's got his hand raised. We'll go with Kent first.
Yeah, I was going to say, Byron, that was awesome. I mean, you nailed the most important things, no doubt about it. A couple things I just wanted to mention. I love the barrel of oil analogy. That's pretty slick. And, of course, commodity versus professional service, that's something we deal with on a daily basis, especially, I mean, it's affecting everything, boundary surveying, also surveying, or also surveys. But I mean, construction staking is the one that it just absolutely blows my mind how these companies are providing what, in my opinion, is some of the most, I don't know, risk adverse services that surveyors do for essentially pennies on the dollar. I'll never understand that one. Another thing you mentioned that I wanted to highlight was the importance of educating your clients. And when you take the time to educate your clients, you're adding value right off the bat. And if it's a client that you actually want to work for, meaning it's a good client, they're gonna find that by you taking the time to educate them, it's just going to provide that much more value. You're a professional, you're an expert, in turn that allows you to charge higher fees, which is what we're all wanting to do. And then the only other thing I wanted to mention was the importance of mitigating risk by doing a go, no-go analysis. It's probably not in your best interest as a company to take every single job that comes along, because that's going to end up backfiring, no doubt about it. So taking the time to do a go, no-go analysis is absolutely invaluable. And one question I had is about the limits of liability. Love what you said there. There's a lot of times that we end up signing the client's contract, and that puts us in a tough situation a lot of times. I'm just curious what success you've had in the past having those conversations when you have to sign the client's contract as it pertains to limits of liability.
On our end, to be honest, a lot of times when we sign the client's contract, we don't even try to, we're more focusing on trying to get things like defense out, or if they have liquidated damages, things like that. Because usually if they're giving you a contract like that, you have to be in a position of leverage to be able to try to say, hey, I'm going to limit my liability, because obviously that's increasing their risk. So it's hard to do that for a lot of us. Now, if I'm doing that, that's why our focus is more on our proposals, getting the clients that we can get to sign our proposals. Because usually once you're on to their contract, it's hard to get something like that put in there. It's very hard to even get the word defend. A lot of times when we have to look at the overall risk of a project, because almost every staking contract from a big company has that to defend in it. And a lot of them won't budge. So we kind of say, okay, what is the risk on this project? Is this a very risky project, or is it a very low risk project? And then use that to decide to go forward. But it's hard to get the limits of liability in our experience into the client's contract.
I was gonna add to that, Kent, as well. So that was going to be what I was going to talk about, the limits of liability. So there's a couple of things there. When you sign the client's contract, I will say a lot of times our contract is on the back end of that as an exhibit. So portions of that, some of our language is in there already, and try to make the argument that, in our contract, which is part of this existing contract signed by the GC, we're all kind of wrapped in there together. But the limits of liability, there was a North Carolina case, and I need to look up the actual case number, but there was, that limit of liability needs to be fair, right? So you can't just say it's the limit of my fees of this contract, and your fee of this contract's $15,000, but you did a staking error that cost $500,000, there's that value to contract ratio that's not that needs to be fair. And so this North Carolina case in this same instance ended up upholding the limited liability part of the surveyor's contract, and ultimately, they had to pay out. So that value needs to be fair. So if you're doing a $150,000 contract, maybe your limited liability is $200,000, or you do a $50,000 contract, it needs to be somewhat fair to the value of the services you're doing. So that was one of the things to be careful of that we talked about recently on Mentoring Mondays. So
that's a good point. A lot of our clients, and I should like the best case scenario is a lot of times it'll be, instead of the word I said limit, it'll be a $50,000 limit or a $100,000 limit. Like I said, it basically depends on the kind of project you're working for, is our experience too.
Yeah, exactly. You just got to, I think after that particular Mentoring Monday episode, it was week 15, if anybody ever wants to go back and watch it, but just kind of, it opens you up to a few things to make sure that you make things fair for both sides. Because that was what the ultimately the court decision was. Basically, you're benefiting from a huge contract, but you're not taking on the liability for it. So that was the court's decision there. But otherwise, yeah, it was a great thing. I see Jake's got his hand raised there. Nick.
Hey, Jake, what you got?
Yes, Byron. So the beginning of your presentation there, kind of hit close to home with my current employer about your barrel of oil, because we seem to be caught in this.
Poor Jake. Oh, there he is.
Yeah, I'm back. Don't know what happened there. So let's say, so with my current employer, especially since COVID hit, the people putting out the proposals and bidding for jobs and everything, they seem to be caught in this trap where they're stuck trying to be the lowest bidder. And for that reason, it seems like innovation within the company has really come to a halt. Because I've even presented some ways that we could, possibly innovate, moving forward. And it's my boy, giving his opinion. So please excuse him. But what kind of strategies or suggestions would you provide? And this goes to anyone to try to keep pushing for, like, hey, we need to innovate if we want to continue to grow.
For me, it's just trying to, and this is, I think, one of the biggest challenges in our industry, because most people, and this is not just surveying, this is the kind of the AEC, you're not trained to kind of look at things from that business lens. You're usually brought up a surveyor, an engineer, and the next thing you know, you're owning a company or you're running a company. And it's just trying to get that framing of kind of looking at projects, and some of that's just going to be over time, keep talking about it and trying to show, like for us, I've been able to kind of prove it, that, hey, and that goes back to like the project management side. It's like, hey, we'll go after certain work, but because we try to provide higher quality services, we're able to charge a lot higher. So I can show, hey, like, here's our profit margin for here compared to here's our profit margin for these staking, where it's like you're lucky sometimes to be making profit. So that's my kind of strategy, is more trying to kind of just keep talking about it, and then trying to show, like, hey, when you have the opportunity to demonstrate, like, hey, we're able to charge a higher margin on this kind of work because we're focusing on like a service we're providing.
Hiram, I think we've got William's got a question, but I'd like to quickly just jump in, piggyback on Jake's comment and question. Would you recommend to new business owners, say from a traditional engineering or survey background, to potentially look into an MBA? I noticed that you've got a master's of business administration. Is that something you may suggest to people looking to run the business side? Any thoughts on that?
If you have the ability, I would actually highly recommend that. If I could go back and probably like redo my education path, I would actually probably done the engineering side first and then got the MBA. A lot of people I got my MBA with, that's where they came from. They had an engineering background, because you're kind of taught that on the engineering side how to kind of think and logically go through things. but I think it's invaluable to learn kind of, and it doesn't have to necessarily be MBA. There's a lot of other courses out there. But getting that kind of business knowledge. I know in Arizona, there's the AEC council actually has a program that you can nominate employees to go do it, and they kind of teach the business side of things, like how to look at contracts, things like that. And I would hope there's some of those services out there for surveyors too. But if you have the ability, yeah, I think it's invaluable to be able to kind of learn how the business approach to view things.
That's great. Hey, Will, you want to take us home? We got about a couple more minutes.
Yeah. Thanks, Nick. No, it was great. As a small business owner myself, excuse me, it's always, scary in the back of your mind what all that legalese is. But one thing that I've found is that you can reach out to your insurance company. Just redid my insurance application the other day. I got on the phone with my agent, and she was awesome. I mean, you don't want to have to pay, so you can send them any contract that a client's giving you to sign and have them look at it. I mean, I sent them my contract to look for some of these exact same terms, but I think a lot of people don't know that option is out there, and you can reach out, get another set of eyes on it, because there's a lot of ways, like you're saying, that you can get yourself in trouble. And I'm scared about it, all the time, every time. And especially when you're a smaller company dealing with big companies, and they kind of look at your contract and go, okay, well, here's ours. And they're, these big agencies, and you don't want to turn away that work, because you're kind of held to the fire by what their regulations are. But it's nice to be able to have somebody that's on your side look at it and say, okay, well, ask about these few items here, and at least get their attention and know that you're paying attention to this stuff. And so just another option that we have out there. So thanks again.
That's a great point. I did break that on the indemnification clause, that wording that I say if they can't get it to defend, we actually got that from our insurance broker, basically our professional liability, because we'll have them, if we get a contract, well, sometimes that we're uncomfortable with, we'll have them review it and give us suggestions. That's a great point.
Awesome. Yeah, that's good to know.
Wanted to make mention real quick that Trent in the chat put the contractual limitation of liability and engineer survey contract upheld, the case he was mentioning. So if you wanted to do some independent research, he shared that with anybody. But we're about out of time. Anybody else have any wise words to kind of cap off this fun week, or any questions or comments for Byram? Kent, Will? I see hands.
Yeah, I'll go real quick. This is a great conversation to have as it pertains to the business side of things, because, I mean, let's face it, historically, surveyors are not good business people. And, primarily, I mean, who knows the reason for it? Maybe it's, they don't know what they don't know. They're too busy chasing the next project, whatever. But as a result of not being good business people, that's why a lot of these professional services are being looked at as a commodity. This is the type of conversation that I think we have to have more of. And I mean, I love the idea of having like maybe a weekly morning chat. Maybe this is something we can continue to do moving forward. Nick and Larry, maybe it's every Friday morning. I know Trent and I talked about doing something like that, but maybe we can, parlay the power of all of our, social networks to promote something like this and have, more folks on, like Byram and the other speakers we had this week. But all in all, I think it's been a great week. And yeah, I mean, I'm just so excited about, the direction that surveying is going, and just geomatics in general. I mean, there's been a ton of chatter on social media this week, which is pretty exciting to see. And yeah, it's an exciting time.
Bill, did you have anything else you wanted to say? I see your hand up.
Oh, no, I just wanted to say thanks. Yeah, it's been a great week. Thank everybody. Sorry I got messed up on the times yesterday, and I had a emergency client, that crying wolf. So, and you said this will all be recorded and put on YouTube or on your YouTube channel?
Absolutely. So the goal will be to process all the videos, clean them up so they're neat and tidy. Make sure make sure no one said anything a little weird. Yeah, and then what I'll do, we'll put them up on our Bad Elf YouTube channel, and we'll be sending out a post-week, sometime next week email. And what that will do is also announce the winners for all the different prizes throughout the week. But it'll have links to the different videos from each of the esteemed presenters. So yeah, we will put it together so it's easy for you to get at. But yes, it will be on YouTube.
Great, thank you.
Larry, I'm going to give you one. You have anything to say, sir? If not, I can close her down.
Nick, real quick, I'll just want to say thanks to Geoholics Bad Elf for putting this together. I made it to a couple of these presentations this week and actually learned a lot from all of them, and excited to check out the recordings when they're available. And Nick, I did have a question for you, follow-up question from a presentation the other day. The sardine loving party chief that you worked with, was his name Jim?
His name was Chris. Actually.
Chris, okay. And then that's just really weird then, because I also know a surveyor who loves sardine to where it's an unhealthy obsession for him. So that's just really odd that there's more than one out there.
Too funny. Well, Jake, we appreciate you coming and appreciate your questions and participating. Trent, I should go ahead and ask you too, or anyone else out there for that matter, any last final wise words of wisdom?
Nope, it was definitely a great week. So great presentations and everything. So thanks guys for putting this on.
Awesome. And Kent, I do like your idea. I think we'll have to circle back around and try and maybe make this a Friday thing, or we would do it on the Clubhouse app, or we can even do these live through LinkedIn and Facebook and such. All right. So I think that wraps it all up. We really appreciate everybody. Once again, thank you to the Geoholics. Make sure that you're tuning in to the weekly podcast. You can find their podcast pretty much anywhere podcasts are available. I know I listen through Spotify. Also, please, if you would, take a look at our Bad Elf website. We create GIS solutions. And so if you're out collecting data, you should check that out. And again, thank you for everybody that was presenting and attending. We really appreciate it. And this has been a great Surveyors Week. I know several of you are also attending the 7-state Surveyors Conference starting tomorrow. Be sure to swing by the booth, as well as I think Trent and Bad Elf and Diamondback and Surveying have booths. So we'd love to see you. And again, thanks for advocating for the geospatial industry, everyone. Have a great Friday.
Yep.
Have a good Friday. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.